Welcome to Last in Line podcast, where we are highlighting, showcasing, and spotlighting great leaders of faith who have overcome adversity, cultivated resilience, and served others in a significant capacity. So settle in and be encouraged by this episode of Last in Line podcast. Hey, I want to welcome everybody back to another episode of Last in Line podcast. I am your host, John Shibley, and I've got a pretty decent topic tonight. I think you're going to appreciate it. At the very least, I think you're going to relate to it. And I'm kind of coming at all of us today a little bit. I'm coming at us in a good way with a good heart, but coming direct and coming, right in your kitchen on this, because I feel like we've got targets on our back. I believe as believers, as Christian men, I believe we are marked men. And so that's what I'm going to call this, marked men. And I'm going to give you 3 tips for avoiding enemy tripwires. I believe there's plenty of those out there. I've got 3 pretty good staples that might just keep you in one piece as you go through this life spiritually. And eventually, when we compromise spiritually, we obviously compromise physically. And there's ways the enemy uses to, kill, steal, and destroy. And sometimes we allow him in. Sometimes we open the door for him. And sometimes we roll out the welcome mat, the red carpet for him, either knowingly or unknowingly, but we do it regardless. And we suffer the consequences most, if not all, of the time. And speaking from experience, I mean, I've taken the bait a few times and I have fallen flat on my face. And this one's going to hit home for me. But I think part of why we have podcasts and why people like me do what we do is to hopefully allow somebody else to benefit from our wisdom or lack thereof along the way. Hindsight's 2020, of course, and hopefully for you, foresight can be 2020 based on my hindsight. And so today I've got 3 tips for you for avoiding enemy lines. We might be short and sweet. We might be right to the point, because I got to tell you, operating on limited sleep, my wife even more so than I, because she actually kind of takes more of the bullet than I do when it comes to, we got a new dog, a new puppy, an 8-week-old. And so it's like raising an infant, and sleep is a commodity, and it's rare right now, good sleep anyway, for her especially. So she's feeling the effects fully of it today. I'm a little draggy right now at this point in the day, but hopefully we can power through this. But that's why it's going to be a little shorter than normal. Hopefully I don't get off on a tangent and go down any rabbit trails for you today. So let's dive in. But before I do give you the 3 tips, I'm going to give you a couple myths and a couple truths that kind of follow us around. They're kind of our proverbial shadow sometimes. The myths, that the lies, you can interchangeably use those, but the enemy likes to feed us what is myth, which is opposite of truth, obviously. And everything God is, the enemy's the opposite of. And so I'm going to give you a couple of these myths when it comes to the tripwires that the enemy sets for us. We've had a lot of military guys on here, and they know what that is. They know what those booby traps are. They know what the tripwires look like and how to look for them, what to look for, why they're there, where they could be potentially. And so we as Christian men spiritually have to know where these tripwires are, because let's face it, we know the enemy's tactics. We know he's got a motive. His mission is to cause Christian men to implode and the family unit to dissolve. He would love nothing more than to get between us and our spouse, us and our children, to the point of division, permanent division. And so a couple myths, couple truths for each one of these, and then I'll give you a tip for these. And there's 3 sections here. So what the first myth that I have believed, and what you might be getting told and fed right now, is it's harmless. Whatever it is for you. In this context, I'm gonna fill in that blank with sin, temptation, distraction, fleshly things that are out there. You know what that looks like. We don't have to go into gory details, but pornography is one. A female interaction with a coworker, with just you and her, like one-on-one meetings, is not good. Putting yourself in compromising situations with the opposite sex that is not your spouse, that you know, we don't have to unpack that anymore. You get what that is. But the lie we believe and the lie we tell ourselves, ultimately, because we did believe it initially, that coming from the enemy, is it's harmless. Like, who's this going to hurt? You know, the flesh has needs. It's not going to hurt anybody. Just talking to this person at the water cooler, in the hallway, whatever. It's not going to hurt anybody. This one website, if I just glance at it, it's not going to hurt anybody. It's not cheating. It's not adultery. I mean, it's not like I'm sleeping with a person, but I'm gonna look at this naked person doing things that I shouldn't be watching, and I'm gonna pleasure myself if need be, because why? Well, I mean, I have needs, right? Those are the things that we believe after we've told them to ourselves long enough, after the enemy has cracked that door for us in inappropriate relationships or interaction. He cracks that door, and we're dumb enough to take the cheese, and then before you know it, we look back and we think, wow, how'd we get here? So I can tell you, it is harmful. It's not harmless. And when you talk yourself out of those things and you minimize the ramifications of said behavior, I think you're doing yourself, your family, God a disservice. You're dishonoring all that the covenant of marriage stands for. If you're married, if you're not, you're still committing adultery. If you read the Bible, you know what that looks like. So these fleshly desires and lust and inappropriate promiscuity, sexual interaction, whatever you want to call it, those things have consequences, guys, and it is harmful. The myth is that you're telling yourself it's harmless because you haven't completely, fully dove in to the deep end. Okay. You've dipped your toe in the water, but it is harmful. It is significant. And the truth is, I promised you truth with each one of these lies and these myths. The truth is, what you feed grows. I've said that before. So if you're kicking the tires on inappropriate conversations in private places, one-on-one with the opposite sex, if you're glancing at a website or you're checking out a particular ad and you dive a little further into it, like, you're not just kicking the tires, because what you feed will grow, and you look at that enough, you do those things enough, it turns into something. It already kind of is something. So we justify that as being nothing, and it is something. So it is harmful when you're telling yourself it's harmless. So my tip for you in this area, my tip number 1 is going to be recognize the enemy's lure. Okay, I'm a fisherman. If you guys fish, I bet a lot of you do. Lures, there's a ton of different lures, colors, presentations, sizes, action, whatever they do, flash, no flash, wobble, no wobble, soft, hard, plastic, like these things, whatever they can do to emulate the real thing, that's tantalizing. So the enemy has lure for us, and so we have to recognize those, and we've got to hate the sin that is bred out of that particular lure or temptation, the sin that comes from it and the downstream consequence and destruction that come from it. We've got to hate that scenario enough to not partake in those actions, guys. I mean, we've got to hate it enough. If you're already in the middle of a sin, it's time to quit. It's never too late. You can repent and get away from it and move on and never repeat that trail again. Never walk down that path again. It's not too late. You're not too far gone. I say stand up, recognize it for what it is. It's a lure. It's an attempt by the enemy to kill you spiritually, to kill your family, to destroy whatever happiness, joy, peace, fulfillment in your life that's there. He wins if you continue down this path. So you've got to hate him and hate the sin enough. And you've got to recognize those lures. That's tip number one. All right. So second part of this, second section for tip number 2, got to cover the myth and the truth first. So the myth number 2 here is the first one you heard, it's harmless. This one is, it's hopeless. We've heard that voice plenty in our life, that it's hopeless. Whatever situation that seems out of your control, it seems beyond the scope of your ability. It seems to have stretched you beyond what capacity and bandwidth you feel that you have been equipped with. You feel like it's hopeless. You can't get back from it. You can't make a comeback. It's too far gone. There's no redemption. There's no way to overcome this. It's already done. You've probably said that to yourself. I know I have. I'm too far gone. It's too bad. There's no way to repair this or restore this. So it's hopeless. And I mean, I got to tell you, the fact that line right there, that it's hopeless, has got you believing that your failures have defined you. They've become your identity, and that your past, your mistakes, even your present, if you're right in the middle of a situation that's a dark place, and you're either a victim or you're the offender, you might be the predator, whatever you are, you've created this or you're a victim to it. Your failure does not define you. Losing is not just in your DNA. Like I've heard people say, oh, that's just what our family does. I mean, this is just as good as it gets. I mean, we're just the blank, the Smiths. We're just the Adams. We're just the Jones. Like, that's just what we do. That's just the hand we've been dealt. It's hopeless. I think God has a different story for your life. God has a different plan for your life. I think there's a few scripture that back that up. He knows the plans he has for you, right? If he's talking to you in Jeremiah, he talks about this. He knows the plans he has for you, okay? A plan for a future and a hope, not for destruction. So it's not too far gone. It's not too late. You're not a lost cause. It's not over till it's over, as Yogi Berra used to say. He has a hope and a plan, okay? So it's not hopeless. I mean, if you serve the living God, if you serve our Almighty Father in heaven, you believe his word. And if his word says he's got a plan and you are, all things do work together for good, you are meant to win, to overcome, to conquer. Like we're his royal priesthood. We're his royalty, right? We're the heirs to his throne. So it's not hopeless. He's not a hopeless God. We're not hopeless people if we're his children. So that's the truth behind the myth. The myth is it's hopeless is your failures define you and losing's in your DNA. The truth is God has a future and a hope and a plan, and he's got good things for you. All things work together for good. It doesn't just say all good things work together for good or all good things just stay good. It says all things. So even hardship, even catastrophe and pain will work together for good for those who love him and are called according to his purpose, is the last part of that. So you got to love him. You got to be called according to his purpose. And I know that you all are. So tip number 2 under this particular myth and truth, these tripwires of myth and lie that we're talking about. Tip number 2 is maintain a right perspective of gratitude. And I know that may seem a little off for that particular topic, but I think that gratitude is the anchor behind us finding hope in dark situations. Finding hope in hopeless relies and is determined by our level of gratitude, because you can look at a situation that feels hopeless, and then if you look over on this other side of your life and you realize, hey, I do have this stuff going on, this stuff is good, this is pretty decent, this was a blessing, like I am, chosen, I am a royal priesthood, a holy nation, right? I mean, if we start saying the words about ourselves that God says about us, that will turn hopeless into hopeful. So we got to maintain a right perspective of gratitude in order to kind of extinguish this tripwire, disarm this tripwire. We've got to understand God has a future. He has a plan, and all things work together for good. So you're not defined by your failure, and losing is not in your DNA. All right, that's number 2, guys. So like I said, we are marked men, as I said in the beginning. If we're believers, we do have targets on our back. So the enemy's coming for you. For those people out there that feel like everything's going real smooth and there's nothing, to worry about, we're not looking over our shoulder because we don't really serve God. So that group, that camp doesn't have a reason to be on the lookout for these tripwires. They don't have targets on their back. They're not marked men. We are marked because we serve the enemy's enemy. So we serve God, so the enemy doesn't like it, and he's coming for us. So, but we win in the end. Spoiler alert, just so you know. So then the last one here in the myth that I have for you on number 3, the third tripwire, I guess, that we're going up against is, we've said the first one was it's harmless, right? The second one was it's hopeless. This one is I'm helpless. Okay? I'm helpless. That can emasculate, that can dismantle our plans, our dreams, us as men. It can absolutely decay any of our calling and purpose that God has designed us for. I'm helpless. I think that gives us a way out. That's a coward's way of quitting, is I'm helpless. I'm defenseless. We're a sitting duck at that point. If we've already sort of waved the white flag and claimed this identity of defeat in a situation that feels helpless, we've given the enemy the keys to our life, pretty much. He's got the keys to everything, and we are, in fact, powerless if we're declaring that we're defenseless and helpless. I don't think that's what we were called to be. I don't think that's what we were designed to be. The whole philosophy of what can go wrong will go wrong is a defeatist mindset. That's a it's a loser mindset. That's a helpless mindset. And we're meant for way more than that. And I got to tell you, when it says we were created in the image of God, and we know what that is, okay, there's nothing helpless about that. We were declared more than conquerors. We were designed to overcome. We weren't promised a smooth road. We weren't promised a trouble-free life, free of hardship, free of pain, free of trauma, free of failure, free of mistakes, right? We weren't promised that, but we were promised that we would have life and have it abundantly. We have been promised that Christ overcame the world, and we will have tribulation, but take heart because he's overcome the world, right? So that's a promise. There's only about 6,000 promises in the Bible that counteract this I'm helpless myth and lie that you're believing. So the enemy is trying to feed you these myths, these lies, and we have a choice whether we're going to eat it or not, right? We're going to spit it out because we're not called for that. We're not called for helplessness. We're not called for hopelessness, of course. So that's what I think that being that we are created in the image of God, we absolutely, that's as true as it gets. And we were meant for something. He says in I believe it's Philippians 1:6, maybe. He who created a good work in you will complete it at the day of Jesus, I think is what it says, paraphrase. But it wouldn't say that if we were helpless. He wouldn't say that he has a plan for our life. He wouldn't call us what he calls us. So I think it's all about staying strong in the Lord. It's all about living in the spirit over the flesh. So my tip for this one, I'm helpless, is the myth. The truth is you're more than a conqueror, that you're in the image of God, created and designed to overcome. Tip number 3 is stay equipped and prepared by doing the work and enlisting godly counsel. Kind of a longer one, but that's tip number 3. Stay equipped and do the work. Okay? Stay equipped and prepared by doing the work. Learn as much as you can. Do as much of the work as you can. Experience as much as you can. Get strong as you possibly can, spiritually and physically. And then enlist godly counsel around you that you can lean on, that you can trust when you feel helpless, when you feel hopeless, when something as small as a conversation might seem harmless, but it opens the door for the devil to kick in and destroy your marriage or destroy a relationship. Get godly counsel around you. Because we're not helpless. We have a choice. We have a brain. We're meant to do the work. Faith without works is dead, the Bible says. So we actually are called to do some things. Yeah, we pray about things. Yeah, we trust God. Yeah, we don't lean on our own understanding sometimes, but ultimately we got to take a step. We got to get our hands dirty. Okay. We got to walk into uncomfortable situations. We got to experience hardship. But we got to stay equipped and prepared by doing the work. So guys, that's it. I mean, that's, in a nutshell, that's some of my caution tape for you, because we are marked men. So I've given you some areas and myths and lies to take into account when dealing with an enemy, because we are in battle. We are at war. And I've given you 3 tips for avoiding the enemy tripwires that we call these 3. So myth number 1, it's harmless. Get away from those situations that are inappropriate. What you feed will grow. So even if it seems little now, it will magnify itself. What you feed will grow. So tip number 1, recognize the enemy lure and hate the sin enough to walk away from it. Myth number 2, that it's hopeless. Okay. That your failure defines you, and you know that's not right, because God works all things together for good. He has a future and a hope and a plan for your life. So tip number 2, maintain right perspective of gratitude. And the last one, myth number 3, I'm helpless. Well, you're not. You're not defenseless. You're not helpless. You're not just born a loser. You're not just forced to deal with this situation. It's not irreversible. The truth is, God, you're created in the image of God. You're more than a conqueror, and you're designed to overcome. So tip number 3 with this one is stay equipped and prepared by doing the work and enlisting godly counsel. Guys, avoid the tripwires. Acknowledge that we are marked men. We do have targets on our back, but that's good, because we are in God's army, and this enemy that we're facing spiritually does not win in the end. He has no power over us. We can walk in righteousness. We can walk in blessing. We can walk in God's protection and provision, but you got to do the work. With that, be blessed.